Hello everyone, I am here to give you a little bit of a lesson on how to start knitting. This little sample here is generally what we'll be aiming for in the next couple of minutes as I teach you. We're going to teach you how to cast on, how to knit, how to purl, how to slip stitches, and I'll also show you how to increase and decrease your stitches. Casting on. So as you can see, I have made my sample on a pair of straight needles, which involves 2 straight needles like so. But for the video, I will be using circular needles. This is very similar, especially if you can imagine that there isn't a cord between the 2 needles and it's just 2 very short straight needles. It's really a matter of what works well for your hands and how you like to knit best. Of course, if you're working in the round with something like a hat or a cowl, sometimes the circular are best. So, to begin casting on, you're going to take a length of yarn and make a quick little slip knot. And then you will put that slip knot onto one of your needles and just cinch it up a little bit. It doesn't need to be crazy tight. Usually loose enough that it can just circulate around the needle. Then you're going to split the yarn that is coming off of the needle with your forefinger and your thumb while holding it in your palm. So what that looks like, you've got 2 pieces coming off the bottom here, so you're going to stick your thumb and forefinger through those, and with your other 3 fingers, just grab those tails. So you'll sort of have this diamond going. Then bring this straight down. And I like to call this the mouse face. You've got the face here and the ears go up around your fingers. So to cast on stitches, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna come up through this ear and we're gonna go around here and then drop your needle through and let it come off of your thumb. And you can sort of cinch it up with that same expanding finger movement. And you'll have a stitch on your needle. So now you're gonna do the same exact thing again. Fingers through, grab the tails, make your mouse face, again, face, ears, this is your nose. You're gonna come up through the first ear, around the left side of the second ear, fall through the first ear and let it slip off of your thumb. And then you can use your thumb and forefinger to expand and tighten up the stitch. Again, it doesn't need to be crazy tight, just a little bit. So up and through, around and down, and cinch it up. Okay, finish casting on. I would say do about 15 stitches just to start, and then we will check back and I will teach you the first row of purling. Now that you have about 15 stitches cast onto your needle, we're going to begin purling. Purling is what ends up looking like this. This would be knitting. Generally, we have 2 different types of stitches while we're knitting, which is the knit stitch and the purl stitch. When you knit on one side, it's going to look like purling on the other, and when you purl on one side, it's going to look like knitting on the other. So this is how we get that really nice, consistent knit look. So to begin, we're going to purl, and we can tell that we're going to purl because it has these little bumps that look like pearls here, as opposed to on the other side where you don't have those bumps, and this will actually end up looking like the V's of the knit stitch. So this is going to be our knit side, and this is going to be our purl side. When you are talking about knitting patterns, this is often called the wrong side, or WS, or the right side, which is RS, but that's not 100% true depending on your pattern. This is your working yarn, which connects to the ball of yarn, and of course your knitting needles. So to begin, we are going to purl, which means that the yarn is in the front on our side of the knitting needle as opposed to in the back. So yarn is in the front, we're going to purl. yourself all set up. So to purl, we are going to put our needle straight into the first stitch. And I like to sort of, not pull my stitch out that much. I like to, the first stitch will be a little bit slippy. I like to pinch my needles here. Not death grip, but you know, snug enough that if I let go, they're held. And you're going to wrap your yarn up and over your needle, like so. And that's counterclockwise. And then you're going to bring your needle back and you're going to pull that new loop that you're making through the old loop and off of that needle. You can, at this point, just give a slight tightening up of your yarn and the tail from when we cast on. And we can start again. So we're gonna go straight into that first stitch. We're going to wrap our yarn around the top and we're gonna pull this loop out. Now this can be really challenging for people. Sometimes it'll just slip off. It's okay, you can start again. You just make your loop and you just very carefully use the tips of the needles to pull the loops through each other. And then pull the old one off. You do that again, so straight in, counterclockwise wrap. We're just gonna gently pull our needles through. So you can do this really slowly. I suggest going slowly and trying to keep your tips together as much as possible. Notice I'm not pulling them way apart. This will make it much more challenging, whereas if you keep them nice and close, that'll be better. So this is purling, and we're going to purl to the end of the row, and then we will do a knit row. Okay, so we have just come to the end of our purling row, and you can see that on this side we've ended up with a whole new set of the little purl bumps, and on the other side we've started to see the V's showing up. So when we get to the end of the row, all done knitting, I've worked right to left. I'm going to flip my work and we're going to work right to left again. Get out a little bit of yarn. So now that we're looking at the V's, we're looking at the knitting side and our yarn is in the back. Remember, knitting, yarn is in the back, purling, yarn is in the front. So yarn is in the back, so we'll be knitting. And to do this, it's very similar in that we're pulling a loop through another loop, but the needle inserts a little bit differently. So you're going to put your needle in. Instead of this way, like we do for purling, we're going to go this way. And we're just going to stick our needle through right underneath the other one in the same direction. And then you can kind of extend them into an X. You can see how they are together. So now you're going to, again, wrap the working yarn around that new needle counterclockwise. Yep, you're going to go up and over. And you're going to pull the loop through the loop again. So just like purling, except it's slightly different. And then you're going to pull that old stitch off and you'll have a new stitch on your needle. Okay, we're going to go in, up and around, and pull the stitch through. Go in, wrap up and around, and pull the stitch through. And we're going to do that until we get to the end of the row, just like with purling. So sticking your needle in, wrapping up and around, and pulling your needle through. You might notice that I'm using my thumb to sort of guide my needle. It's sort of like a shuttle. So I let it come down, it's grabbed that new loop, and it's just sitting on the edge of this other needle. So I want to use my thumb and just let it push through, and then I can take the old stitch off. I'm going to go in and around You can do it without that thumb movement as well, but sometimes it helps keep things really nice and tidy. And remember to keep your needles together as much as possible. Don't be cranking them out this far from each other. Almost always the points are going to be touching and gliding past each other. So knitting to the end of the row. There we go. So here we have our knit side, our right side, and we have our purl side or our wrong side. And we're just going to keep going for a couple of rows, and I will show you how to increase and decrease. Next, I'm going to show you how to increase and decrease. There are a couple of options for how to do both, but these are some of the most popular and best ways to add a little bit of decoration or shape to your work. To begin, we're just going to slip our first stitch. So we're going to insert our needle purl-wise and just move it from one needle onto the other. We have not knit, we have not purled, we've just merely slipped it from one to the next. And that was slipping one purl-wise, where we went like this. If you were to slip one knit-wise, you would insert your needle as if to knit and do the same, just slip it from one to the next. But we're just going to slip one purl-wise. So to do a decrease, one of the most popular is called knitting two together, and it's just what it sounds like. We're going to knit these two stitches as if they were one. So instead of knitting like this, we're going to knit through the two stitches. So we're going to capture both and knit them normally. So come up and around and pull that new loop through. And what you'll see are two stitches, one here and two here, now with a new loop. That is a decrease stitch. Now I'm going to show you an increase stitch, which is a yarn over. We're going to come up and over with our working yarn without going into a new stitch. So we just sort of make up a little stitch as we go. Next, we're going to do another knit two together. So we're going to capture two stitches, come up and around, and pull them through. Great. And so you can see the yarn over made this little hole, which can be a nice decorative eyelet. Now we're going to do another yarn over and another knit two together. When you do this series of knit two together, yarn over, knit two together, yarn over, you'll end up with this lovely little stitch row of eyelets, and it will keep the same number of stitches overall. So when we end, we'll still have 15 stitches, and that is because we are decreasing. We're taking two, making it one, and we're making one. So we have 1, 2 for every 3 stitches essentially, but we'll end up with 15 again at the end. So we're going to yarn over, knit two together, yarn over, knit two together, yarn over, and our last 2 stitches we're going to knit two together. And there you can see we've done some increases and decreases. And then you can go along and just knit as normal, knit purl as normal as you go, and you'll have a little string of yarn overs. Or you can make that into your new decorative feature. You can use that to add shape. If you add yarn overs, you're going to add stitches. If you decrease, you'll be taking them away. There's really an infinite amount of possibilities with patterns of doing increasing and decreasing stitches along with your patterns. So I'm just purling across real quick. This is all just normal purl. When you get to the yarn over stitches, you just purl them as normal. They are a little bit floppy, but that's okay. Just purl, purl, whoop, purl, purl across till you get to your last stitch. And I'll show you what it's going to look like. So here we go, back on our right side, and we have this nice little string of decorative holes. There we go.